Okay, this video is going to show us how to get user input using dialog boxes or using the JOptionPane class. We covered the JOptionPane class in chapter 1, I believe it is, that when we showed how to show a message or use an alternative to a print statement by using the JOptionPane class. And so what we've covered in the past is that we covered how that there was an import statement for the JOptionPane class, and we needed to have that line at the top before the class header. And so that's what this is. And then we also showed that instead of a print statement, you can do a show message dialog method using the JOptionPane class to print or display on the screen something in the same fashion as you would using a print statement, the difference being that it's in a dialog box. Now what we're going to do is we are going to show the alternative to the getting user input using the scanner class. So in the scanner class, if you remember, what we had to do is we had one line that prompted the user for input, enter your grade, and then another line that then read the input and then stored it in a variable. Now we're going to be able to do that at this time with the dialog box and the show input dialog method. We're going to be able to do that all on one line. And so as we look at that, we'll see then that we have here it was a show message dialog. Now it's going to be a method. It's going to now it's the show input dialog method. And so what this line of code does is it provides a dialog box that does ask the question and prompt the user for input. It also provides a place for the user to type the input, and so when the user types or clicks on OK, then whatever the user types is then now going to be stored in the variable here on the left of the assignment operator. Alright, so that's how it works. If you were to look at this and you would see, oh well, you know, is there a problem with this code that something you're concerned about, you might go, well, it says how many of those pets do you own, which is a number. Let's say the user types a 3, and then you try to store that 3 into num owned. However, num owned is a string, so this doesn't make sense. Well, and the reason is because of what it says up here. The show input dialog method returns a string. So what's happening is this 3 or this 3 that's being typed, that's going to be the return value of this show input dialog method. That is its return value. But it's not just a 3, it's really a 3 that if you were to illustrate it would have quotation marks around it, because really it's a string. And you may say, well, what's important about it being a string versus a number? And so that will be shown here in just a little bit. And so anyway, so this is a string, so that's why it's a return value of a string. That's why when you store the return value of the show input dialog method, it needs to be in a string. And so anyway, so that's what this says up here. You have this for reference for your notes. So let's look at an example of that. And so if we pull up our JGraph and we have this code here, and you'll notice then that we have the exact same program here, and let's see if it really does store that 3 or that 4 inside of a string. And so as we compile this, we see first of all that there are no errors, that the compiler is completely fine with that. And my computer is being very slow right now, so this is a little bit irritating. So come on now, it's not finishing. This is crazy. Alright, so anyway, we did get it to work. And so now as we look at this, we're going to run it. And so, oh boy, come on now. And so here's the question in the dialog box. Enter favorite pet type instead of being down in here. So we enter cat, just for kicks. And then we click on OK, and then it goes to the next line here, and it says how many of those do you own. And so let's go ahead and put 3. And so you can see it does actually store the 3 in num owned, and then in here the call, the return value of the variable call is 3, and so it says you own 3 and then cats, and so that's how that works. So you can see that it really does work. So let's go ahead and look at the next thing then, and that's not what we wanted to look at. Let's see now. So you might go, okay, well that's fine, and our ints and our doubles are actually going to be stored in string variables, but that's not the case because there can be issues. And so let's take a look at issues that can happen. Let's go back to JGrasp, and first of all, let's show what happens if you try to store the numeric input into a string variable. We're going to take a look at how this show input dialog does really bring a string or return a string, even if it's numeric, because if you try to store that numeric data inside of an int, it's not going to work. And so as I showed here, it says, let's see if we can get this out here, it says incompatible types, the string cannot be converted to an int. Why is it saying string if the user types a 3? Because the return value is really a string, that's why. And so that string, it says it can't convert a string to an int. Alright, so that's what's going on there. And so we say, okay, well then that's fine. Let's just do this then. Let's just go ahead and make this string, let's int a string. What could be wrong with this? And so now it's going to work and everything will be fine and all of our problems will be solved. And so we go in here and we compile it and we go, wait a second, now I got another error. And so here's what happens. It says the error is on line 11, which is right here. What could be wrong with that? It says a string cannot be converted to an int. What do you mean? So here we go. We have this cat, which is a number, but it really is a string. So let's say that we put 3, so it has a 3, but that's a string. And then we say we have 4 dogs, and so 4, but that's actually a string as well. Now, what is this going to be? Can you add strings, or can you only join them together? So hopefully you understand you cannot add 3 plus 4 and get 7 if those are actually strings. That's like saying 4, or that's like saying A plus B is some numeric value. It doesn't work. So this is a concatenation operator now because its operands are strings, and so all that does is join those together. All right, because that's concatenated, but it's not a 34. It's a 34 as a string. So first of all, that's giving unintended results. You want it to be 7, but it's giving you a 34. The other problem is that it says a string cannot be converted to an int. This 34, which is the result of this calculation, is trying to be stored in pets. A string is trying to be stored in an int. That's not going to work. You can't convert a string to an int, at least automatically. All right, so that's how that works. And so let's take a look at some more stuff here. And so, well, so in here, let's go ahead and write. Now, when I put these notes together, the type of thing I was doing did say bad operand types for a binary operator. And so I'm not going to go into what that was. I could just say quickly it was where one was a one of the numbers was a string and the other was an int, and it tried to add a string numeric data plus a an int numeric data, and of course it won't do that. It can't do that. And so here we're going to say a string can't be converted to an int, and that's what we just demonstrated. Alright, so those are going to be some errors that you could run into. I really should have said on here is that you would get unintended results, but we don't need to write that down. Anyways, converting a string to an int. Now, so here we go. Here's the answer to that problem. We got to be able to convert a string to an int. It's not going to happen automatically, and so we have to have code for that. And so what we use is we use an integer and a double wrapper class, which uses the parseInt method and the parseDouble methods. Okay, so if we look at that, it's very simply, this is how it looks. And that is, you take this is what you start out with. So all you're going to do now is add code to that. And so you take the integer wrapper class and the parseInt method, and I put these on 2 lines so that it doesn't, so I don't have to scroll over to the right in my JOption or my JGraph screen. So we have this method parseInt, and we know it's a method because it's got these parentheses right here, and so that typically indicates a method. And the method has a function. This function of this parseInt method is to take the 3, let's say, that the user says, which is, because it's a show input dialog, it's going to return a string 3, and so it's going to take that string and it's going to act on it. It's like a magic wand. It's going to turn that string into a regular 3. So that's the return value of the parseInt method, is an int, whereas the return value of the show input dialog is a string. And so it gets converted. The return value on the parseInt method is this int, and so it stores a 3 inside of an int, which makes complete sense. Alright, and so of course that can be done with dogs here, but also a thing to understand is the parseDouble and the double wrapper class can do the exact same thing. So you could have double here, and you could have parseDouble, and it would do the exact same thing. Now what happens then is that these now cats is storing an int, so the 3 plus the 4, now this will become an addition operator, and so now it's 7, and so 7's an int, and then it's going to be stored in pets, which is an int, so that makes complete sense. So now everything is right with the world, and that's because we're using the wrapper class, the parseInt and parseDouble methods. So let's see what we can do a demonstration. And so we're going to go to this one, I think. And so here's that exact thing that we just went through. We compile it, and we have, okay, the cloud operation. I'm having trouble with the cloud operation today, so let's try it again. There we go. And so let's run it. And now we can put a 3 in there, a 4, and then everything works. You own 7 cats and dogs. All right, and so that is, I believe, all that we need to do on this particular page. Yeah, that's it.